Thank you. Good afternoon. Lovely to see you all. If I could start with Professor Perkovic. Thank you. So last estimates, we talked briefly about research with Iran, and everybody said no current research. And the answer to the question on notice, the follow-up question, was very precise from the University of New South Wales. It said, at the institutional level, UNSW has no active research collaborations with Iran. Is that because you knew you had individual engineering researchers who were collaborating on research with Iran?
No, the answer that was provided was specific and precise and accurate as we knew it. And we manage that very carefully. We have been very clear with our researchers and with our academics and with all of our staff, certainly and particularly since the communication from the Foreign Minister in 2023 that we do not want or accept any sort of research collaborations or active collaborations with Iran or Iranian institutions, and have communicated that and managed that across our organisation.
But it seems to be very clear, unless you have information to the contrary, that there was a paper published, I think it was in the Institute of Electrical Engineering journal just a couple of months ago, with a co-author from the University of New South Wales, along with researchers from China and Iran. What do you say to that?
So I'm advised that the work that led to that paper's publication was undertaken prior to the communication from the Foreign Minister. So that was research that had been undertaken some years previously and was published. As is often the case with academic publishing, these things can take many years to be published. It was part of a multinational consortium that was undertaking collaborative research where a UNSW researcher was involved, and in that specific situation, I believe, provided editorial oversight of the publication rather than an active role in the research.
I suppose that really raises the question that I have. I acknowledge that research can precede publication by significant periods of time. For it to be before the letter from the government, that would be, we're talking now 3 years of time. Editorial oversight, though, is something that would happen in the later stages of research, in fact, when you're preparing that research for publication. So have you made any inquiries? Can you be certain that that editorial oversight did not occur recently while the research was being prepared for the very recent publication?
So I don't have the specific timelines of the processes involved in that particular publication here at the moment. We'd have to take that on notice. But it is important, I think, to recognise the timelines. As we've said, the editorial involvement can begin at the very beginning of any research. It doesn't necessarily mean it occurs at the end. But also, perhaps, it's important to recognise that often publication takes place many months or sometimes even years after papers are finalised and submitted.
What inquiries have you made about this matter?
So we've certainly looked into this matter internally. David, I don't know if you can comment on any specifics. I don't have those at hand.
Yeah, look, what I can say is that we, at this stage, are confident that the university at all times has abided by the requirements that we have in relation to the sanctions that have been imposed on Iran by the government. We obviously are continuing to work with the Commonwealth in relation to making sure that we are always doing research that's both in the national interest but also obviously does not breach sanctions obligations. I guess the other point that is important to note is that the paper you're referring to, the research is fundamental in nature, as is other references to this work in the media.
But we would all agree, wouldn't we, that applications come from fundamental research, and without fundamental research there are no applications?
Well, to a degree, but I think the important thing to note here is that this is not work that's been done for the Iranian government. This is work that is publicly available. It's not work that has direct military applications. And as I said, we're confident that the university at this point in time is abiding by all the obligations that are required of us underneath the sanctions.
You have a campus at Adford, do you not?
Yes, we do.
And so have you made inquiries there in relation to research, and have you made inquiries of any of your researchers who have access to any research that might be occurring at Adford?
We always make sure that sensitive research happening at UNSW happens with the appropriate barriers around it, so that it always serves the national interest.
And this research with collaborators from Iran and China was not considered as sensitive research?
This research didn't relate to any of the work we're doing at ADFA.
My question is, was this sensitive research given the research partners?
No, that's...
Like, how do you define sensitive research?
The nature of the research in and of itself, as I said, was not.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something that had direct military applications. It was something that was fundamental in nature.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whether a piece of research or not is sensitive depends largely on a whole range of different factors, but obviously work that we do directly concerning the Australian Defence Force and the work we do with ADFA, of course, is sensitive, and of course we make sure that the appropriate guide rails are in place.
Okay, thank you. Professor Doughton, perhaps I could come to you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor, will you table the full unredacted preliminary assessment report into Dr. Randall Abdel Fattah?
We have already put into the public domain a modestly redacted version of the initial inquiry, so-called, into the ARC request for us to investigate Dr. Abdel Fattah. The redactions that are in that document are important ones. They are individuals' names who appear throughout the document, either raised by reviewers or Dr. Abdel Fattah herself under privacy obligations to those individuals. We believe that it is important that they are redacted. The other major part of the document which is redacted, and we believe has good grounds to be redacted, is that that which pertains to the ethics clearance, because those are confidential matters. And I would take advice on whether, if we provided a copy of that the redactions could be maintained intact or would be held in camera in confidence to the members of the committee that you have there. I would need to take advice on that.
I understand that, Professor. I understand that part of the redactions included the description of the preliminary assessment process. Is that the case?
I don't have the document in front of me at the moment. It's a very long document. I'd have to go and reread that to determine an answer to that. I can provide that on notice.
If you could provide it on notice, and if it is the case that the description of the preliminary assessment process has been redacted, I think we'd be very curious on notice also to find out why that's so secret and why that should have been the subject of any redactions.
My recollection is, and I'm not sure where the honourable member has received that information, and again, without the document in front of me, I can't speak to it except to say that the way the investigation was conducted was in line with the National Code for Responsible Research, which our own Macquarie University code closely mirrors. Mm-hmm. The procedure involved responding to a specific set of questions from the ARC, and that was done by our Research Integrity Office with significant input from two internationally respected experts in the field who are highly vetted before they were involved and have had no association with anyone at Macquarie University in their own work. That is the essence of the process which was conducted. I will go away and look into what has been redacted, and if there is something about process, why that was done. But my recollection, and again, I don't have it here, is that it's not detail that we redacted.
Okay. No, I would appreciate receiving that on notice. I'm curious, I completely understand why it may be appropriate to redact the names of certain persons. I'm curious as to why you think it's necessary to redact parts of the approval process for the ethics application.
Well, it's not so much as I recall the process of the ethics, but the content of the ethics. Because again, in considering the conduct of research of many different types, particularly, I'm not speaking about laboratory or bench research here, where there are different sorts of ethical issues involved. But in the sort of research that we're talking about here, there are important issues of, again, individuals who are making statements about the work they're going to conduct, who they might consult by name, and so on and so forth. That is a part of the ethics clearance process.
But if the names were redacted, what about the rest of the approval process needs to be redacted?
Let me take that on notice for the honourable member, and I'd be happy to come back when I've looked at the document again. It is, my understanding is that it would be regarded as standard practice in a research environment in these sort of matters, that redactions of matters in relation to ethics clearance would be the norm.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask about a range of the activities undertaken as part of the grant in question, and these activities included the so-called children's excursion, being the lead research on the anti-Palestinian racism in Australian schools report with APAN, at the so-called JARS workshop. Is that broadly correct, that they were part of the grant?
The grant, certainly in the original application which Dr. Abdel Fattah made to the ARC for the grant, which would have been reviewed by a panel from the College of Experts appointed by the ARC, and the ARC would have received the report back from that review of the grant. In that original grant, Dr. Abdel Fattah made it entirely clear that she was an activist, that she would be attending protests, and that would be part of her research, yes. That was a part of the original approved grant.
Okay. And did Dr. Abdel Fattah have ethics approval for the children's excursion, the kids' excursion?
I don't believe that was part of research. It was being conducted as a part of her own
Sorry, Professor, I'm a little confused because I thought we just said that those activities were part of the original grant, and now we're hearing that there was no ethics approval for this particular project because it wasn't part of the grant. Which one is it?
Well, I think we need to be careful here that what I spoke to earlier was the application in the grant spoke to activism as a broad category of her professional and her personal life. The grant application did not go into specifics around which particular protest or which particular activism she might do on which particular date, because she clearly would not have known what was going to happen some years after the original grant was made. And,
so Professor, are you suggesting that she received an ARC grant to engage in activism?
What I'm saying is that the grant records, in her grant, she makes it very clear that she is an activist and that she would be attending protests as a part of her research. She certainly did not make any specific reference in the application to attending any of the particular protest activity that you're referring to in specificity.
But the grant was the part of the initial application that was approved indicated that she would be engaging in activism as part of the research, and that was funded by the ARC.
Correct.
And the total amount of that grant was, do you have that handy, Professor?
It's just a little over $800,000, I believe, over 5 years.
Right. My understanding is that Dr. Abdul Fattah has argued that the kids' excursion where school children were taken to the encampment at the University of Sydney, encouraged to chant Intifada among other things, that this was justified on the basis of either ethnography or participant observation. Were ethnography or participant observation included in the ethics application as far as you're aware? Because you would have seen the unredacted report.
Well, certainly my understanding is that Dr. Abdul Fattah is an ethnographer in the field of sociology. It is a broad field. Sociology is quite a broad field. Ethnography as a technique within that field is quite a broad field. So my presumption is that it would have been part of the original grant application, and the ethics clearance would reflect the grant application. And I think, but as I say, it's a broad categorisation.
But we're not able to see the ethics application, are we? Because that's been redacted.
As I indicated earlier, I'm happy to go back and look at the detail of what the redactions are in that, and take advice about the provision of that for the committee.
And what were the reasons why this grant needed to be investigated in the first place, Professor Doughton?
The origins of the investigation of Dr. Abdul Fattah's work, which came from a request by the ARC to the university as the administering organisation, I believe was provoked by media reports raising concerns about Dr. Abdul Fattah. And my understanding is that is what the ARC discerned over and decided, based upon content of statements that Dr. Abdul Fattah may have made in public settings, that they wanted us to conduct an investigation in quite specific areas around the conduct of the research.
And did those remarks that Dr. Abdul Fattah was quoted as saying include references to bending the rules?
My understanding is yes, they did. My understanding is also that, and we have not ever seen a full transcript of what she said. We have asked for a full transcript of what was originally said, and we were not able to be provided with that.
Did you ask Dr. Abdul Fattah for that transcript?
We asked the university where the particular meeting was being conducted, where that statements were apparently made, to provide us with a copy of that transcript.
You don't.
We would regard, by the way, which we would regard as the authoritative transcript.
You would understand, would you, Professor Doughton, that for a layperson, somebody putting in research funding for activism and then claiming that participating in activism as research does look like bending the rules?
I don't think Dr. Abdul Fattah's remark, as reported in the news media, about bending the rules was connected with the statement you just made.
Okay. What rules was she bending then, or was she claimed to be bending then, Professor Doughton?
My understanding is that when she made that statement, she was referring to conducting an alternative form of research than organising an academic conference.
Isn't participating in activism, according to Dr. Abdul Fattah, an alternative form of research?
Yes, it is, but she had a specific form of research in mind, as I understand from my memory of the reports from some time ago. She had a specific form of convening of individuals in mind, not a traditional academic conference.
Was this
but
the
again, I stress that.
We've lost your sound, Professor Doughton. I don't know whether you can hear me. We've lost your sound.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, it dropped
Yeah.
in and out a bit at your end too.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that the specifics of what we've seen and the reviewers that we had review this were only what was reported in the news media, not a full transcript to put things in context.
Okay, thank you. My time's elapsed. I might come back to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Downton, perhaps I could come back to you. We were talking about Dr. Abdel Fattah's description of some of her research, which was subverting established forms. That was the JARS workshop, was it, that she was talking about?
I believe that is likely correct. Thank you for that question, yes, but again, I have to go back and look at what we have seen from the public reports of what she said to confirm that.
And I understand that the report that you've received, and it's been partially made public, specifically raises the issue of a need to determine with regards to what research data, if any, might be able to be used from the JARS workshops. Was any usable data produced?
I'm not able to answer detail on that. What I can confirm is that the preliminary assessment process identified that the workshop was a community engagement activity undertaken by Dr. Abdel Fattah. It was not a research exercise, and that Dr. Abdel Fattah has committed to leading a formal academic conference as a part of the requirements of her research grant.
So it subverted the research paradigm by not producing any research, is that right?
No, I would not characterise it in that way. The field of sociology, and specifically using the methodologies of ethnography and the subfield of autoethnography, and again, I would crave that the members of the committee understand that I am a physician and biomedical scientist by background. These are not my disciplines, but my understanding is that these fields do involve immersion in communities to understand social dynamics, and that as I say, the original grant made this very clear, the sort of work she would be doing. And I've just reflected upon from my notes here that I do have with me what the preliminary AE assessment opined on.
Okay. But it remains true that apparently no usable data has been produced by that JARS workshop.
I can't speak to the specificity of that.
Have you made any inquiries, given that this was something that was flagged by the report as being needed?
The inquiries that were made were ones where we had the international experts involved in this, and
with respect, Professor, the international experts who were the authors of the report flagged that this was an area that needed to be considered. Has that been considered by the university?
The university has provided the report to the ARC. The ARC has confirmed that they are satisfied with the findings of the preliminary assessment. And they have indicated to us that from their perspective, the matter is now closed.
Thank you. Has the university seen the Australian Palestinian Advocacy Network report that Dr. Abdel Fattah co-authored while employed at the university?
I can't speak to whether who would have seen that. I've not seen it personally.
On notice, can you indicate whether that report constitutes research, a research output from Dr. Abdel Fattah?
On notice, yes.
Thank you
I
very
can
much.
have that on.
Thank you. You had previously answered questions in relation to this research grant and other related matters, giving testimony before the Commonwealth Senate. Is that true?
That is correct, yes.
And on those occasions, you indicated that, certainly personally, that you considered that a number of the statements, and I do not propose to restate these statements here. I think they are sufficiently on the public record without me having to recite them again, that they could be construed as anti-Semitic. Is that true?
Perhaps at this stage I might point out, for the benefit of the committee members, that I have offered to give this evidence here today from an offshore location. I have been informed, based on the committee's advice, that the usual privileges of parliamentary privilege are not available to me in this hearing, which as a parenthetic I would say is quite extraordinary, but that's apparently the rule. And so I'm not prepared to make any further comment on that at the moment.
The comment I'm asking, Professor, is for you to confirm that you said that at a public hearing.
Yes, I can confirm that, yes.
Thank you very much. Can you indicate if any disciplinary action has been taken in relation to Dr. Abdel Fattah?
I again would crave, as I have done in that federal parliamentary hearing you mentioned earlier, that when the university is confronted by any staff issue that raises questions about where disciplinary action might be taken, those are matters which are conducted in accordance with our policies and processes, of course with regard to the law, federal and state as well, and that we do not make any public comment upon particular individual cases in those regard, with regard to the privacy laws of the state of New South Wales and other jurisdictions.
So is it your evidence then, Professor Downton, that you are unable to indicate whether or not the policies of the university with respect to making racist, anti-Semitic statements have been applied in respect of Dr. Abdel Fattah?
What I have said a moment ago is when any concern is raised about any member of our staff, we conduct the relevant procedures and we maintain confidentiality around those for any particular individual.
Can I put it to you, Professor, that with respect, when statements have been made in very public fora, and when those statements are by employment connected with the university, if the university, for whatever well-intentioned reason, remains very quiet about any response or reaction to those statements, that they remain unchallenged. Is that your intention with respect to the anti-Semitic statements that have been made by Dr. Randa Abdel Fattah?
Yeah, I'll hear the point of order.
Point of order is that we are now delving into the employment relationship of one particular individual with Macquarie University. That is outside of the scope of this committee, and I would suggest inappropriate for that to be discussed with that person not available to have any say.
To that point of order, we are discussing the way in which standard university policies are applied and the balance point between privacy concerns and addressing public concerns.
To the point of order, Ms Carter has repeatedly referred to one particular academic. It is quite clear who she is referring to.
I think we do need to be quite aware of the procedural fairness rules. The academic who is being talked about is not here to defend themselves or to put their point of view. I would caution the member around assigning particular words and characteristics to a person who is not here to defend themselves, but otherwise I think the questions are in order.
Professor, can you comment on the general issue of how the university, as a member of a cohesive society, as an important member of a cohesive society, addresses and upholds social cohesion if you are not free to publicly discuss statements made by any member of your community, associated with your community, that may in fact raise issues of concern in relation to social cohesion?
Thank you for the question. Perhaps I can give you some indication in broad terms about how my university and how I personally have handled the matter with you, which you raised. I'm making no specific reference to any individual here. We are a community which is very committed to diversity and inclusion, celebrating the difference in all of its forms, and that we have made repeated statements within our community in many different fora, using many channels of communication about our policies and procedures, and that we have no tolerance for hate and violence or hate speech in our community. We've taken a strong stand on these in multiple different fora, and where appropriate, we've worked with other government agencies, particularly commend the work that the New South Wales Police Force have helped us with when there was a graffiti campaign, an anti-Semitic graffiti campaign on our campus. We had that taken down in the middle of the night, a cleaning crew coming on in the middle of the night to remove that, and boarding up that which could not be removed by that crew and was removed during the next day. The New South Wales Police, working with us and closed circuit television footage, apprehended individuals who were not part of our community, had nothing to do with the
I'm
university.
grateful for this discussion, Professor, much of the detail of which we are familiar with. We're really talking about public statements rather than police and graffiti.
Well, I think with respect, the issues around anti-Semitism in our society and other Western democracies around the world span the whole of these things. There's not just about statements being made.
All right, thank
But
you.
certainly-
Perhaps I can ask you just one last question before I hand over to my colleague. Do students and staff at Macquarie University who are Zionists have the right to cultural safety?
All students and all staff, no matter whether they're Jewish or of any particular faith, tradition or ethnic background, have the right to safety. Yes, of course they do.
Thank you, Professor.